Welcome to the webinar on setting up transcripts. I'm Beth Elliott, your trainer today, and we'll be going over how to set up permanent transcripts in MMS Generations. This is going to include setting up the format of your transcript, setting up each of the categories or areas that go with that transcript, figuring out what we're going to do with our assessment options, and then actually printing and selecting students. So we're going to start by going under Grades in MMS Generations, More Grade Reports, and we're going to go to Permanent Transcripts. In here, there are a couple of different versions of our transcript. We have a pre-printed form where you need a dot matrix printer, one that has tractors to feed the paper through. We have a laser form, and we have a continuous laser form. The difference is if I go into the continuous laser form and I go to set up selected form, is the student information, school, prior class record, and current class record are the same in all of them. But here in the continuous form, there is one area on the right-hand side of the transcript. If I click OK and go to the laser form, when you come in here, I'm actually going to recall some settings so I have something to work with. But when you go to the laser form, there is 4 areas on the right rather than 1. And these have specific number of lines associated with them. There are 9 academic lines, 9 test record lines, 17 for the Activities Honors Awards, and 8 in Miscellaneous. Where the continuous form, there's something like 47 of them. So they're just that you can pick and choose how much space you want in each. So that's some of where you're going. When you come into the setup of the form to start with on the outside, before we go into the setup selected form, you have an option of whether or not you want to include prior year courses with no grades or credits. So you might have in a prior year had a course that, say for lunch or study hall or some other reason that the student was assigned to that ended up with a grade plan. And you can say, oh, I don't want to show that one. And you can do the same thing in the current year, but the current year, if you're doing, say, a transcript at the end of semester 1, a senior or someone might be taking semester 2 courses that would not have any grades or credits yet, but you would like to have them show on the transcript to show what they're going to be, what they're going to be taking. So I might, on the current year, say, yes, give me courses with no grades or credits, but not in my prior years. At the bottom of this first on the left side is you also have the ability to exclude specific courses from transcripts. And that's where if you had actually scheduled study halls as a course, or there might be some other courses that you decide that you don't want on there, maybe something like open gym, the in-school suspension. Now, some of these are in here for the purposes for scheduling for the teachers and don't actually have students in here, but it does give you the option that I could come in and say, oh, don't show me lunch. I don't need to see that, nor my study hall. And you do need to click on the course code side when you select here. And I was using my control key to toggle these courses on or off. This list can be sorted either by the course code or the course name. And it gives you a little information here about how do you work with that. The right-hand side lets you have some information about what else you're working with. One thing is which grade point value group do you want to use? And this is if you are using alternate grades for your transcripts. So you might be choosing to store your grades as a numeric grade to make it easier for and more accurate for doing your GPA computations or final average computation. But you might choose that you only want to print the letter grade. And if I'm going to substitute my numerics for letters, or actually letters for numerics, then I need to know what group I'm going to pull that from. Because you might have some multiple substitution that one of your grade point value groups might be substituting your pass-fail for the numerics rather than the numbers, rather than say an A, B, C, D. So that's why you need to be able to pick which one you want. Below that is the ability to indicate whether you want to include your transfer courses or not. And if you are including the transfer courses, do you want to include the transfer school name that you have the ability to fill in? And I would say most of the times that if you're going to include the transfer courses, you probably do want to include your school name. Now, if there's no school name included, it's still going to print the transfer course. It's not that you have to have both. Below that is the ability to indicate whether you want to include your withdrawn courses on the transcript. Some schools do, some don't. And then there is an option to include the student assessment records on a separate page. Later in this process, we're going to be going in and showing about options for the assessments, and I'll come back to that area. Okay. And in all of this, I can always go up to the question mark and get context-sensitive help about the area that I'm working with. So you can always come in here, see what's going on, do things like choosing a transcript form, entering the categories, saving and printing. So it's going to let you go through and figure out what areas you need to work with. So I'm going to set up the selected form. And in here, as I said, there is the 8 different areas. The easiest to do is the school information. And when you click here, it's just a fill in the blank. You're going to get the school name loaded for you based on the school that you have your setup in. The address would come in if you have that filled in the database configuration for the school tab. It would not be indented like this. This was where we put some spaces here. But basically, this is just the blank lines. You have 8 blank lines and fill in the information that you want. So it's just type it in. The student information, you have 8 lines. And if I click on a blank one, I can see that they're each 40 characters wide. And as long as it'll fit on 40 characters, you can put it in here. So what you would do is you would highlight the field that you want, and you can have the student name in 2 formats. And what we do with the student name is either first, middle initial, last, or last, comma, first, middle initial. And what this does is it'll combine the student's name for you without extra spaces. Below that in this example is they're showing the parent's last name and first name, the street number and the street address, the city, state, zip. Now I can see here for the city, state, zip, I might be having a problem because the city, state, zip, ST, CS for state, and then the zip, there's no space here indicating between the state and the zip code. So to fix that, I can clear that line and then select the fields again. So I'm going to select C City from my list, and this is, the length is 16 characters. This is where I can select which contact I want to bring it from. And you can pull from any one of the contacts that you have in your system. And I can go ahead and add that biographical field. Now, if I want to make sure that there is a space after the city, I can come up to the top and add 1 space after basically no text. And it'll put a space there. And then I can come down here and pull up the state. Now I have 2 choices for the state to add that extra space. I can leave the length as 2 and add a space up at the top, or I can increase the length and add it that way. So now it's showing 3 characters before I put in the zip code. And I want to add that in. The same thing I might need to do for the date of birth here, because I'm seeing that I have 8 characters for the birth date, and I know that with a 4-digit year, I need 10. So I'm going to come up here and type in what I'm looking for, so date of birth, and I'm going to put the colon in, and in order to get the space between the colon and where the birth date actually goes in, I need to tell it I want to add a space. So I'm going to highlight this line and clear it. add in the birth date, and then come down to the field, find my birth date field. Oops, I need the one with the underline. The birth date without an underline would be shown for students that are in Pennsylvania but not anywhere else. So I want birth underscore date. I'm going to leave the length at 10, and I want to add that field. And that's just how you put your fields in. You just put them in one at a time. So we're going to click OK. And we're going to look at the class record. Now this class record, even though it doesn't say prior, is actually your prior years. So when I click here, I'm going to be able to see my school years, and you would select a school year, potentially give a grade that would go into under the YR column, and then the rest of the label is going to actually start here on the left and fill in. You can label your columns, and you can put in up to 6 different grades and the credits. The button that says grade fields allows me to pick which grade fields I want to bring in. And I have the option that I can bring in some blanks if I wanted to rearrange things to make sure things line up. Now, if you have a situation where you are storing credits not only in the final average but also in the semester or mid-year average, you can move multiple credit fields over, and what it will do is it will add the credits together. And the other field that you have the potential to bring in is the course level. So if you wanted to indicate, say, a final average with a course level and the credits, you could do so. Because the course level, you could give a little key that says 1 is a general course, 2 is honors, 3 is AP, that sort of thing. So I'm going to click OK. In here, you can indicate whether you're going to print the recorded grade or the alternate grade, and that's where that grade point value group comes in, so it needs to know which one you're going to work with. And then on the right, you're going to say which order you want to see the courses. Do I want to see them in course name order or course code order? Some schools, the course codes are grouped by subject. So if I did it in course code order, my English always comes first, then it might be my social studies, my science, and my math, versus if I'm in course name order, it's going to be whatever the course name is alphabetically. So it gives you that option. And this is letting me know that my grade fields are going to start in column 1. And I'll show a variation of that in a little bit. So I'm going to click OK. And in the current year class record, I can opt to bring in different information. Now I can use the same field. So if I come up here, right now I'm seeing quarters 1, 2, and 3, but no final average. Now because I am in January, I might be having just finished quarter 2, but quarter 3 is in the process, and with the new grade book, those grades are going to start being filled in for quarter 3. So I might not want to show those just yet. So I'm going to remove quarter 2 and quarter 3 and quarter 4, and I'm going to put in a couple of blank fields to be as spacers for that. And then I'm going to bring in my final average and final credit, because I could compute my credits halfway through the year and get credits for my semester 1, quarter 1, or quarter 2 courses, or it might be a trimester course, depending on what you have. In this area, you still have a maximum of 6 grade fields that you can work with. So I'm going to click OK. And again, I could have specified where I want that to start. And here it's using an alternate grade rather than the numeric grade. So I'm going to click OK. The academic standing area gives me the ability to specify what sort of information I want to bring up. So this could be their GPA. It could be their class rank or credit total. Here we're showing some areas where it's showing the attendance totals. So if I want to bring in the career GPA, I can click up in my text area, indicate it's a career GPA, add that to the line, and then come down to the GPA and say I want to pull from the career and add that after it. Now because the GPA can go out to, I think it's four places to the left of the decimal place, I wasn't as concerned of having it right up against the colon. Now, I might have more than one GPA that I want to put on there, and I can come down here and pick which ones I want, say a 4.0 scale or an unweighted GPA. So there's my unweighted career, and I'm going to put that in. Now, if I want to bring in the class rank, I can just indicate that it's the class rank, add that in, and then here on choice 3, instead of GPA, I'm going to indicate rank. Now, the rank that I print above for career doesn't have to be the same rank I use, the same GPA I use, rather, for ranking. That's up to the school as to which one they want, if they want to show class rank on the transcript or not. And then I also have the ability to bring in credits. Now, all of these, as far as the GPA, credits, class rank, and even honor roll, all of these are coming from my current school year. So if I want to bring in some of this information from other school years, I have to transfer that into the current year to do that, or recompute it. So I can see, say, a 9th grade GPA, a 10th grade GPA, an 11th and 12th grade. So there's my career credits, and I'm going to bring those in. And you can have multiple levels for your credits also. Now, if I'm bringing in my attendance totals, that's a little different because I can come from each year and say which attendance total I want to bring in. So I'm going to come in here where I have headings on the far left, and then I'm starting to bring in the individual totals for the attendance areas. So on this line, I already have the 12-13 attendance absences. So I'm going to come in here and say, oh, I want the 13-14 absences, and I'm going to bring it from the YR code to say which one I want to bring in. And I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And I actually didn't have any spacing here, which means I have to back it out and put it back in again. And to do that, I would clear the line, put in my heading. I believe there was a space there. And then go back to the 12-13. And you just have to bring them in one at a time. And then add spacing, because this will print, I believe it's 4 characters, and these headings are 5 with a couple of blank spaces, so I need 3 spaces between before I add in the next one. And some of this you end up just counting when you move things in for you to see what's going on. And then I want to add 3 more spaces, so I bring in the next year. Still doing year. And then add my 3 spaces and bring in the current year. Now, current year, I might not want those in yet because the year isn't completed, or I can show what it is year to date. But it does give me the ability to bring those in. When I come into my test record, this is where I could potentially have biographical fields. So I might have some ACT scores in here, or I might have some SAT scores. And sometimes it's just a P underscore to indicate my PSATs, or a letter underscore to let me know what score I want to work with. Or I might have some others that are let me do the T and come back up. So there's my SAT scores and I would need to know what the fields were that I had stored that information in. So in this case, it's just some biographical fields that have that information. You also have the ability, if you have the assessment package, which over on the left is going to show as testing, to be able to bring in individual ACTs and SAT scores. And the SATs can be sort of a general with your critical reading, math, writing, and some subsets, or they can be subject-based. So things like CL would indicate that it is Chinese language. And I can bring these in one at a time if I so choose. So if I come in and say, oh, I want to bring in the SAT score for English, I can go ahead and put that in. And some of that is I can say, what do I want? Do I want to see the test label where I would see English? So I'm going to add that label, put in a space, and then I can pick that I'd like the test date if I want to show when they took it, or I can pick up what sort of score I want to show. So I'm going to put in the percent score and add that to right after it. And this is showing me how much I have left when I add more things in. Now, when I'm in here for my assessment data, if you're going to put the labels and stuff there, you're going to see what it is. And when I do the assessment options, I can come in and say, what is the date range of the assessment scores that are out there? And when I print, do I want to print the most recent score, the highest score, or the lowest score? So if the student has more than one, which one do you want it to print? Because they might have taken the SATs or the ACTs more than once. So it gives you the option, but it's only going to print one of them. When we come out of this, we're going to show how you can print all of them, because you can do that when it's on a separate page. Your activities, honors, and awards is 17 lines as you scroll down. Now, each of these lines is 32 characters long. And what this database has in the biographic is it has a series of activities that are all 32 characters long that gives me the ability to fill in the blanks for what the student has been up to. So it might be that they are in the show choir, or they participated in the musical Grease. It might be that they were playing basketball. Whatever it is the student activities has, you can put those in here. It might also indicate whether they made National Honor Society or any other awards that the student might have. And the same text file, biographical field, potential grade field, or assessment scores can be put into the activities also. Oh, and one thing I didn't do on the last one, if I come back here for a moment, when I was working with the test selections, is I didn't say show test selections. So when I'm putting that in, I need to show which ones I want to bring in. So I brought in the English score, and so here it's sort of checking off which items I want to bring in on which line. So it just lets me see what's going on. And then I can see it's the most recent, it's the number of characters, and what else I want to work with. Just gives me a little idea of what am I working with. The last area is miscellaneous. There are 8 lines here. And in this case, it just has a note. It just has some text that says a T in the front of the course name is indicating it's a transfer course. Some schools might put their motto there, or their vision of some kind. It's whatever you'd like to see. They might also bring in a biographical field that potentially indicates where the student transferred from. It's your choice what sort of information you put here. If I exit out of here, I have this other area about including the assessment records on a separate page. And this allows me to set up those options. The difference here is I check which test scores I want to see, and if I use the check mark at the top, it's going to use them all. And if I'm sitting on one of these and I set the date and I say select all, it's going to set all of those to those same dates. But here I can see the section, the subsection, the versions. The test scores right here are all of them, but on individual tests, I can say whether I want highest, most recent, or lowest. Where when I'm putting it in the actual smaller area, I can only pick one of those, and that's for all of the tests, not just a specific one. And then I can say I want to see the raw, the scaled, the percentage, text, and or show the max. So it just gives me a different version to work with. If I want to select a student, I can do the student range. The default is I'm going to see everyone, so I can deselect everyone, select just one or two students, click OK, and print. Now when I come in here, here's my student information. So Amy's first and last name, her parent last name, first name, the street number and the street, city, state, zip, the birth date, and so on. The school information, and your school information could include something like your CEEB number. So here's the information for each of my school years for Amy. This started on the left side, so it has the school year that she's in, the courses, the grades, and the credits. So here, her business class, business math, was taking at G.W. Irving High School in New York, and it shows the final grade and the credit for that. And then you have her next school year and the current school year. So you're seeing just first and second semester, and there have been no credits computed yet, or not earned yet, because there's no final averages. Masonry is showing, even though there are no grades, because we said show courses with no grades or credits. Below that, or up on here on the side, we have the GPAs coming in, her rank, the credits, and then for each of the school years, her attendance totals. And then we're seeing the label for her ACT English, and turns out she does not have a score for it. And then here are the activities that she's been involved with. As I scroll down, I can see any information about transfers. And then there's an area for a date, a signature, and a title. You can do a user copy of this report. If you wanted to, say, make an area at the bottom for the school seal, or you wanted to bring in the school logo, either up at the top or down the bottom. Now, if I go to the next page, the second page happens to have Amy's test records. So she has a scaled score for her English and not a percent that I put in. So I can go back and change that and show it with the scaled score. And so here's her English, her math, her reading, her science, and her English writing scores. So this can be an easier way to do it rather than trying to fit it into the form. And then I can see her sister's record for the various years and what sort of things she's been up to. Now, what's nice when you include the assessment scores on a separate page is you don't get the labels when they didn't take the test. So in here, I would see the label if they didn't take the test, where in the other, I might not see that. And because Christine here doesn't have another page, she didn't have any assessment scores. So it gives me that option. All of this, actually, let me go fix that score in the test record. So I'm going to do the test label again. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to add the field, add a space, and then put in the scaled score. And I want to add that in. So when I print again, I'm not seeing her English score. I must not be bringing it in from the right place. Okay. I was expecting to see it. It's always fun when it does things like that to you. I brought in the scaled score. Oh, I'm probably not down one of the levels. But it does give me that option to be able to bring it in. And if I want to save this setting, I'm going to go under Save Settings. Now I can add it to the existing one, or I can add another record. And if I add another record, I just have to give it a form. So I'm just going to put laser with assessments and select it. So the next time I come in, when I hit the recall, it's going to ask me which one do I want. And it's as easy as that for me to work with it. Okay. Any questions? Good. Now, sometimes you might want to change how you label the courses. And as if I'm moving from one school year to another, so when I go to the 16-17 school year, or when I went from 14-15 to 15-16, I need to change the order or where I put my current class record. Or I might choose that I'd like to change the labels. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to remove these 3 lines and put them in again. And I'm just going to put some dashes. So I'm putting 6 dashes to the left, a space, the full digit years, a space, and then 8 dashes. And I'll show you that in just a minute of why I did it. Now, one of these setups for your transcripts can be set up so that it is available to the parents. And that one is, instead of indicating what grade they're in each year, so I say 09, 010, 10, 11, 12, I might do it this way. And what this is going to do when I print is it's going to give me the ability, and I still have those same 2 students selected, that it's going to put these dashes in. And that's why I changed my heading a little bit. It just makes it sometimes a little clearer to see. And let me check my valid grade list for this year and see if I have alternate grades set up. Because I thought what we set up in the current year was that it was going to use the alternate grade. So that's telling me that in my valid grade list, I don't have those alternates set up yet. So I'm going to resave this right in here. And I want to go look at my alternate grades. So under grades, more grade edits, I'm going to edit the valid grade list. And as I scroll down, there are alternate grades. So why is that not showing me the alternate grades? Let's try that again. That says alternate. That's better. I just had to select it again. So here with the alternates, I can see the letter grade rather than the number grade. And it might be that your school shifted, or there could be other reasons that you want to do that. And I could do it for both pieces, both the prior years and the current year. Now for Amy, she doesn't have a 2012-2013 school year record. So I don't even get the heading for that year because she doesn't have any records for it. So it just gives me the ability to come in and say what's going on. All right. Okay, let's see. I have a question. Okay, I wanted to get more information on students that did not attend our school in any of the years from 9 to 12 and how best to do transcripts. When a student comes from another school, the guidance department is creating student records for those students in other years that they were not here in order to do their transcripts. As a PIMS administrator here, that kind of messes me up when I'm looking at the older years of information and I know that the student didn't attend in those prior years, but I'm seeing an active record for them in those years. So what you can do in the prior years is you can, because the entering transfer courses and grades is going to copy the record from this year to prior years, but you can go to that prior year and make them inactive and biographic. It's still going to allow their transcript to print, but you don't have to have that in there, and you don't have to necessarily have their state ID number in there in the prior years also. So you could take that out, and without a state ID, that record is not going to go up to the state. So you can come in and say, oh, I don't have that, then I don't have to count them. But in each of the years, if I go ahead and close out of here, I'm going to resave this just so I have it with the update. What I'm talking about is under biographical, more edits. You can set the student active, inactive status. And in here, in a prior year, you can make them inactive in the biographic and inactive in scheduling, so that you don't have to worry about the PVAS if you were going back and redoing a prior year. But you want to leave them active in grade reporting. This is also where, when you're computing your class rank, you can exclude a student from class rank if you had, say, a transfer student, foreign exchange student rather, who's only in there for 1 year. So it gives you a way to work with that. Does that help? Okay. Okay. And what I was talking about taking the student to a prior year is, you go under grades, more grade editing jobs, you can edit transfer courses and grades. This is also available from your web portal. And if you copy the student or select a student for a year they are not in, so I can recall and bring in my final average and credit, when I go to edit, this allows me to pick a prior year. And if the student record isn't in that year, it would ask me, do I want to add it? And I can say yes, and then that gives me the ID to know who it is in the prior year. I would go to that prior year and make them inactive in biographic, and potentially remove the state ID, so that too is another one. And without an attendance entry code, they never started. So that would be another reason they would not be included in most of your PIMs. They would just show as a count for what's there. So it just gives you another way to work with that. If I want one of those transcripts to be available for my parents, I would go under School, Operations, and I would go to Set Up Parent-Student Portal. In here, when I do my grade reporting, I can indicate that for transcripts, I can activate the transcript on the website, and I can say which transcript I want them to have, which save setting do I want them to have. So if I want to move it to the new staff one, I can do so. Or I can leave it on the one I already had. And I can just select that, and then that becomes the transcript that the parents and students can see. So it's kind of nice to be able to do that. And this activate is what lets it so that they can see it. The label that you would use for transcripts, so if I go back up to the page layout, I can go to grade reporting, and I can come in here and say transcripts versus my assessment record. So it lets me see how I want to label each one. And I can put in a description here of further information. So if you have questions, please call this phone number, or anything else you'd like to do with that.